Welcome and greeting everyone for joining us for the first pre-event webinar, which is entitled Promoting Sustainable Practices in Glass Production, Decarbonization of the Glass Industry. This webinar is conducted under the banner of Global Glass Show in Abu Dhabi, UAE on 6th and 7th September 2023. My name is Anjali Devrani and I am privileged to host this significant webinar with our esteemed panelists. We have Naomi, Global Membership Manager, Glass Futures, Mohammad Baig, Deputy Managing Director, Tariq Glass Industries, Graham Dodd, Director, Arup, Gianluca Rapone, Façade Engineer and Sustainability Lead, Façade and Materials Design Consultants Limited, Jyoti Ramalingam, Director, Winwall Technology India Private Limited. Welcome everyone once again. Glass industry is one of the most energy intensive sector. So now let's discuss the efforts within the glass industry of the UAE and explore the various measures for sustainable practices. To start with, I would like to ask Naomi, what are the key drivers of decarbonization in the glass industry and what are the main challenges that must be overcome?
Yeah, so that is a great question. And just for those of you who don't know that are here joining us, Glass Futures is a global glass research and innovation facility based in the United Kingdom. The facility is 165,000 square feet with a 30-ton per day pilot furnace and combustion test bed and further space for demonstration equipment. So as you said, the glass manufacturing process, it hasn't changed or evolved in many years, and it is highly energy intensive. So 80% of the emissions from glass making are in the furnace. So in this instance, the need for greener fuels is key, but the cost of these is high. So there are challenges from capital constraints and the risk of innovation as well. So Glass Futures hosts a collaborative membership and circular value chain. This membership aims to spread the cost of research across membership, de-risk innovation on our 30-ton per day pilot furnace. So we support collaborative projects that align both public and private funding, thus minimising the need for grossly large investments for decarbonisation, and projects are driven by the needs of our membership as well. So we do that through our membership and membership council, and they lead and steer the direction of our research. So if we think about data and reporting, because that's another issue that we need to look at, there is a need for better understanding of sustainability data and reporting and the resources that will enable us to decarbonise on a global scale. Once an organisation can hone in on understanding available resources, recycling options and clear routes to secure supply chains of alternative fuels, but materials as well, only then can we address these challenges. So there's a lot of, a lot of question marks. There's a lot of the unknown currently, and everyone's just trying to gather that information together so that we can find these routes. What we do know is solutions will be based on your geography, your local infrastructure, and the resources that you have available as well. So that's what we're looking at currently now with our members. So what we do know is companies are issuing their SBTIs, science-based target initiatives, setting highly challenging and motivated goals for 2030 and 2050. And in order to achieve this, they are looking for those clear routes and milestones towards decarbonisation through sustainability, maybe their journey, or a decarbonisation roadmap, or modelling of the economic landscape.
All right, now.
Okay.
So with this, I would also like to know how imperative is this for industry leaders to forge collaborations and international partnerships within the glass industry? And will it enable switching to more energy efficient manufacturing processes that can significantly reduce energy consumption and carbon emissions?
Yeah, absolutely. I would say my answer is definitely yes. So in Glass Futures, we're operating in the middle ground. So we act as a lever from the lower TRLs, from the concepts and the scientific studies, and we provide the demonstrations in real time that will lead us to commercial implementation and rollout of those higher TRLs. And this is how we're helping organisations currently. So it is majorly important to forge collaborations and international partnerships. And we do that through the membership currently. So we're not building a state-of-the-art furnace. What we want to do is build a furnace that is already in use for our industry. So you can come to us and you can trial new concepts that will de-risk trials on an individual operating line. So to give an example of our collaborations, in 2021, we did the first large-scale trial using 100% biofuels in float and container manufacturing. This collaborative study looking at sustainable liquids and gases suitable for glass manufacturing began on a combustion testbed to determine fuel suitability before later demonstrating this on a functioning container and float glass line. So the container trial that ran for 3 weeks on biofuels, sorry, I'm losing my voice this morning. It ran for 3 weeks on biofuels, producing 173,000 beverage bottles from 100% recycled material, which is cullet, as we all know. So making this batch the most environmentally friendly bottle ever produced. And then adjacent to this was the float glass. We ran the trial for 4 days, producing 165,000 square foot of the lowest carbon float glass ever made. So the outcome of these trials, the statistics, were significant to the likes of key industry players who were involved in the project and were able to market this material.
So thank you so much, Naomi. Indeed, you have highlighted the very important points of this industry. And with this, we'll move on to our next speaker, Mr. Mohammad. Please tell us, how can glass manufacturers strike a balance between reducing their carbon footprint and maintaining profitability and increasingly competitive global market?
Thank you, Anjali, first of all, for inviting to this webinar with such an esteemed panelists. It's an honor being here. And that's a very good question. I was just, the first thought that comes to mind is that Tariq Glass, we basically manufacturers of tableware, container and float glass in Pakistan. We have a combined production of over 1,500 tons per day of float glass, tableware and container. So at Tariq Glass, especially in the last 5 to 7 years, we've never really thought of sustainability and reducing our carbon footprint separate from our profitability. I mean, a lot of the initiatives that one takes, they simultaneously reduce your carbon footprint as well as increase your profitability. I mean, I'd just like to highlight some of the initiatives we've taken over the last 5 to 7 years and how they improved our profitability as well as reduced our carbon footprint. So we did a lot of design changes to our furnaces during our rebuild and reduced our gas consumption by 25% of our per ton of glass melted. Now, you know that the energy consumption is one of the highest factors in your cost of the glass that you manufacture. So when you reduce it by 25%, it really increases your profitability. It makes you more cost competitive, as well as reducing your carbon footprint. Other than this, we've installed solar, 1 megawatt solar power at our plant, and we're planning to put another 3 megawatt solar. Now, the cost of the solar over a lifetime is actually less than the power that we're consuming from the grid. In the same way, we're doing our own in-house oxygen generation. So when you burn gas with oxygen instead of air, you use less gas. So you have a reduced carbon footprint, but when you're producing the oxygen in-house, your total cost of the burning is much less than if you do normal air and gas mixture. In the same way, in our float glass, during the end of the lifetime, we actually used about 70% cullet in our float glass for our green glass production. Now, usually with cullet, it is availability is more of an issue as opposed to the actual usage of the cullet. But when we did get all that cullet available and when we use it in our float glass, our cost per ton actually reduced. So a lot of the initiatives we take are simultaneously reducing our carbon footprint as well as increasing our profitability. On the other hand, we do take certain initiatives such as water recycling, reducing our emissions of NOx and SOx, and other such things, which may not affect our profitability, but we all have to live on this earth, and we have to protect it, because it's not just short-term profitability. If you're not able to use that water, and if you consume all of it and waste it, after 10 years, you'll have to, buy the water from somewhere else, and that will be a cost. So, you can't just think about short-term profitability. It's about the profitability in over 10 years, 20 years. So I don't think those things are exclusive, profitability and sustainability. But yes, certainly there has to be certain government regulation to bring all the manufacturers on a level playing field, so that things that are harmful for the environment, which we see, especially in countries like Pakistan, where there are certain manufacturers which are using tire oil and a lot of dirty fuel, you have to regulate those. There's no other way of going about it. So that's my point of view on it.
Mohammad, great to know about the initiatives taken by the Tariq class. With this, I would also like to know, how can glass manufacturers leverage technologies and components to achieve greater operational efficiency and reduce costs, while also driving sustainability improvements?
It's all about technology, actually. I mean, without advancements in technology, it's really difficult to make these improvements. I mean, all of the initiatives we took was because of technology changes. If you just look at solar, about 5 to 7 years ago, the cost of installing one solar megawatt was about $1 million. The same thing is about $450,000 to $500,000. Now, that is not technology advancement that we've done at Tariq class, but we're benefiting from those technology advancements. In the same way, Naomi mentioned about all the research that, all the manufacturers pool in their resources and make their advancements. The advancement that they'll be making over there will be the ones who will be eventually benefiting from those when they're commercialized in maybe 5, 7, 10 years' time. Even our in-house oxygen generation, there's a technology called VPSA. Now that when it was commercialized, it reduced the cost of in-house oxygen generation, which meant that we didn't have to buy oxygen in liquid form, which is transported from an air separating unit, and there's no diesel cost of the transportation and everything. So technology is everything, but as a manufacturer, we only have certain resources and we can't take too much risk. I mean, when we put up a furnace, we have to live with it for 9, 10, 12 years. We can't take big risks. So every time that we adopt a technology, it has to be commercialized, and it has to be something that is something that we have seen proof of concept of, and we have seen it being used and used profitably for a certain amount of time. That's where organizations like Glass Futures and other research organizations come in, and we'd be more than happy to pool in our resources as well, so that we can benefit from these technologies. But as a glass manufacturer, we can't take too many risks in new technologies. We have to see some proof of concept, and it has to be because, whatever decision we take, we have to live with it for 5 to 10 years, and we live in a very competitive market. So we have to take all factors into account. So that's my point of view on this.
Thank you very much, Mohammad, for offering your perspective. I think we got to know a lot about it. Also, with this, I would like to ask Mr. Graham, what are some examples of successful sustainable practices implementation in the glass industry, and what lessons can be learned from these examples?
Thank you. Thank you very much for inviting me to be here. It's a great event. I think there are two that I'd like to talk about. One is the use of delivery of jumbo sizes on dedicated vehicles on the float liners, and I'll explain that, the reason for that in a moment. The second was the innovation of utilizing clean cullet from the downstream processes, the offcuts, and returning that cullet into glass manufacturing. And we've heard from Naomi about the investigations into improving the furnace efficiency. And we all know that in making float glass, the more cullet you can use, the lower the emissions, the lower the costs, all sorts of good things happen. And so that initiative of bringing back those offcuts from pre-consumer cullet, really, from the processors, was a key stage. And the reason that is key is actually because that amount of cullet is not enough. We need a lot more back from post-consumer glass, from glass that's served its duty in buildings and is being removed from buildings. A vast proportion of that has the potential to be recovered as clean cullet and used in float manufacture. And what we've found in our role as engineers and designers, consultants, we have demand from clients who want to see the glass at the demolition stage before refurbishment, removed from the building and recycled as the same quality of product, not downcycled into lower grade products, but back into float glass. And they see the carbon benefit of doing that. And what the approach that we've used is knowing about the cullet return schemes from the high quality processors, and knowing that they have a transport route back to the float line through their dedicated jumbo vehicles that are transporting glass into the processor. That is a route which is very efficient to take glass from a building back to a local significant processor, smash it into cullet, into the same bins, and it gets transported back to the float producer. So those that initiative, which was taken a long time ago, to transport float glass efficiently and to take back offcuts from processors, enables another phase of work which we are now heavily involved in, removing glass from buildings, reclaiming it, and returning it to the glass manufacturers.
Great, Graham. Also, I would like to know, how are the consumers responding to the sustainable product options in the glass industry, and what steps can organizations take to promote their eco-friendly product offerings?
Well, I suppose as a designer and specifier, I'm kind of in a way representing a consumer in the commercial buildings sector. And what we're seeing is that they have responded really well to low carbon float glass offerings. There's a lot of demand for those products, but we know that those products, there isn't enough cullet that I just talked about that can be returned from buildings. There isn't enough of that for everybody to make low carbon, high cullet content glass forever, all the time. But what I detect among what we'll call the consumers, the owners, the architects, crucially, specifiers, is a bit of a shift in what the objective is. And I've spent my career in the glass industry aiming for the 20th century modernist ideal that glass is invisible and it's of infinite size and it's absolutely flawless. And that's quite exciting. We've all seen projects like that. But actually, that we can't actually achieve a sustainable future if everybody aspires to have that kind of architecture. And my sense is that actually it's been done. And what we're looking for in architecture is a different objective. Is an objective that recognizes the impact that materials have on the environment, not just glass, but glass is a real kind of leading material in this respect. Recognizing that impact and designing and demanding products that recognize that if they're made in a slightly different way, if they're made in a more sustainable way, they'll have different visual qualities. They might have a little bit more color. They might have more seed bubbles, which when you get really close, you might be able to see them. They might have different visual characteristics. but they will communicate the objective of selecting, demanding, using materials that respect the environment. And the big challenge for me as an engineer, and I think for the glass industry, is to establish what that different aesthetic looks like in glass terms. What are the changes in processes that would really reduce the carbon emissions? We've heard from Mohammad about using oxy-fueling. That's a fantastic technology that reduces the carbon emissions and which even reduces costs, doesn't affect the visual quality of the glass. If he was prepared, given permission to change the appearance of the glass, what could we do that would really reduce the carbon emissions further? Because I feel there's a willingness and a need to embrace that in architecture, and to head for a different aesthetic ideal.
Thank you very much, Ram, for sharing all the interesting information regarding the colors of the glass and the plain glass. Also, I would like to tell all the attendees that they can put their thoughts, they can ask questions at the chat option. Also, with this, we are moving on to our next speaker, that is Mr. Gianluca. So, Gianluca, please educate us on what are the most significant trends in facade sustainability in the global market, and how are they shaping the industry?
Thank you, first of all, for inviting me to this very interesting panel discussion. And thanks for the question. So I'm going to step back from the glass industry for a moment and give you kind of the trends in general in facades and sustainability. So I think in the last years we've seen, I think we can distinguish between top-down trends and bottom-up trends, let's say. So from the top-down side, we have initiative in kind of policy making and trying to benchmark and setting targets. And these have been driven mainly by organizations rather than governments, because the governments with policy making, they are always a little bit of a step behind. But there's been a lot of organizations pushing for this benchmarking and setting targets. For example, the World Green Building Council in the UK, we've had the LETI, for example, pushing a lot for this. And we are seeing, I think, the outcome, at least in the UK, for example, the outcome of this has been the initiative of the UK Net Zero Stand-up, which has been written up this year, should be ready by the end of the year. So if we look instead from the bottom-up trends, these are more led by the industry, and it could be either by designers and engineers by way of obviously specifying a better but more sustainable products and promoting efficient design, but also from manufacturers coming up with new greener products and putting them on the market, and also contractors by looking at procurement, optimizing procurement and optimizing design. Another trend that I would say we've been seeing is definitely the focus on retrofit and refurbishment rather than build new. And there's been a lot of, for example, lessons learned there about reusing and recycling what's already there rather than introducing new materials. Another trend, I think it's also this shift from the kind of ticking boxes green certification schemes that were the only ones perceived as kind of sustainable in the past. And now I think we have recognized the limits of those certification schemes, and we are moving towards a more holistic approach that looks at whole life carbon assessments and takes into account both the operational carbon and the embodied carbon, and also the end of life, what's happening at the end of life. So that's very, very positive, I think. And I think we can, within that approach, the whole life carbon approach, we can also distinguish two kind of, let's say, sub-trends. One being focus on upfront carbon and try to reduce that. So the carbon that we input at construction stage, at manufacturing and construction stage. And then it's more recently probably focus on the circular economy. So what's going to happen at the end of life of the products? How can we reuse? And when we look at the embodied carbon and particular upfront carbon, we can also we can distinguish, let's say, two branches of how we can achieve, how we can improve that. And one is low carbon materials, which can be new materials with lower carbon compared to traditional materials, or obviously decarbonizing the materials that we've been using for a long time, which is essential in the facade industry, because the two materials that we use the most, being aluminum and glass, were unfortunately heavy on carbon. So I think we've taken big steps in the last years to decarbonize these materials, and we just need to scale that up to a kind of global scale. And then the other sub-trend is kind of efficient design. So trying to design to use less material, and also think about the whole life, not just what we are inputting now, but what we're going to do with it at the end of the life, which take us to this kind of circular economy principles that is, I think, emerging in recently, and it's I think very important, because I think it has a massive potential to unlock the true carbon savings in a whole life carbon context, especially for facades that are made with so many different materials and are so complex, where, and also facades being the face of the building, what we see, there's obviously much more focus also on the aesthetics. So we can't decarbonize and make the facade look horrible. Obviously, we also need to make the facade look nice. And I think that's why I think circular economy in facades is the thing that is going to unlock the true potential. So reuse as much as we can, think about the end of life, what we're going to do with it. Yeah, I think the contractors are key into this discussion, and they will need to kind of lead the way with their supply chain and thinking about different approaches than just to sell their product and step away. So I think there's a lot of interesting things happening, and then will happen in the coming years. And putting glass into this context, I mean, we have already heard about the decarbonizing the glass production from Naomi. We've already learned about promoting closed loop recycling from Graham. So these are the main I think drivers from the glass industry in this context.
So Gianluca, should the glass industry promote principles of design efficiency to reduce the embodied carbon of architectural glass by design?
So this is, I think, it's a bit of a provocative question, because obviously the glass industry, they want to sell glass, so they want to sell more glass. On the other hand, I would say that I don't think anyone. So I think no one wants to over design and waste, let's say, material that is very precious. So yeah, low carbon glass is great. Obviously, we need to decarbonize glass production, absolutely, but we should also try to use less glass in the first place. Let's say if we think about the hierarchy of embodied carbon reductions, the first thing is use less stuff, right? And then you get into decarbonize the actual material that you're inputting. So we should try to use less stuff. So we should try to not over design. And this, I think, comes with maybe a more thorough design, more attentive design, which should lead to material savings. And at the same time, this I think goes hand in hand with risk and risk assessment, because I make the example, for example, here in the UK, I think the way before all the sustainability drive, there was a tendency of over designing kind of glass buildups because of an aversion to risk, or that kind of led to, for example, having heat treated glass everywhere, laminated glass everywhere. So I think we should try to start rethinking that a little bit. And this will need obviously also the client involvement, because they have the ultimate let's say decision makers. So they need to be comfortable, obviously, using a more efficient, but maybe somehow slightly more risk in the glass they put in their buildings. But yeah, I think what glass manufacturers can do is kind of promote good practices in design efficiency, and support the designers and the engineers to achieve these savings via design. And then the last thing I think that glass manufacturers should do, and to be honest, to give them credit, they are already doing, is promoting circularity. So it's you know, the no waste philosophy, and yeah, I'm happy to see that most glass manufacturers are doing this. So you know, try to reuse rather than recycle, and recycle everything that cannot be reused. I think some steps that can be improved here is what I've already said. So trying to recycling is great, and obviously glass is a perfect circular product, but we should try to reuse as well if we can. So if an IGU at the end of its life, can we take it apart and actually don't just throw it into the recycling bin, but can we actually reuse what we can of that original IGU to make a new IGU? Or can we extend the design life, obviously, of IGUs? So these are all important aspects that the the glass industry needs to tackle.
Thank you, Gianluca, for contributing your thoughts on this. And now I would like to ask Mr. Jyoti, what are your comments on the need to have better quality checks on processed glass reaching the aluminum fabricator factory? We can't hear you, Mr. Jyoti. Can you unmute yourself?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay, thank you for the opportunity to be a part of this August gathering. Just before I get into that topic, the one thing that we are to look at is that not look at glass as a single independent, it is a part of the entire ecosystem. So if you look at it, the use of glass has to go up because modern buildings need to have that, you know, the external facade invariably has a lot of glass being used in it. And there is, as I see it as of now, there aren't too many options which have the advantages that glass has. But however, as far as the one thing that we can look at is to make sure that whatever is being delivered to the site is of a certain quality, and that quality is consistent, so that we don't have to remove and immediately replace it because it doesn't fit into the rest of the facade. And one of the challenges that are facing the facade industry is that once the glass processor, as far as the glass manufacturer is concerned, they make the good quality glass, float glass, and deliver it to the processor. And there's a lot of effort that is put in by the consultant and the architect to arrive at the color, shade, and the right U value, the energy efficiency for the glass, for the performance. And then the glass is sent to the processor for cutting and heat strengthening or toughening. And if that process is not properly controlled, you invariably have glass that's reaching the aluminum contractor, which is not really within the specification. There are a lot of distortions, waves, which ultimately when it reaches the site, you find the very purpose for which it is used, that is the aesthetics amongst all the other highlights. The aesthetics is damaged because in a large facade, if even a few hundred panels are not consistent, then it reflects on the entire project. And all the efforts that are being put in by the other players goes down the drain. So, some more checks and balances need to be built in. And one of the things that we are doing in India is to, first of all, there is one new gazette notification that has come in India, where all the toughened, the safety glass needs to have the quality mark, that ISI mark from the government. So that compels the processors to submit samples to a approved laboratory, get their products tested, and that certificate is used as the input to be eligible to get the ISI mark. So therein, some checks and balances are being built in now to ensure that the processor's quality is matching the requirement, the IS codes that have been set down. So from there, now this is a one-time effort which is done by the processor once in a couple of years, maybe once in 2 years or something. So we have a process where we as a third-party lab have a glass testing as one of our specific areas of testing. And we talk to the consultants, and then few random panels are picked up from the contractor's factory and sent to us from a lot, which are signed by the facade consultant. And these are tested. This is done progressively over a period of 4 or 5 times. So we test those panels, full-sized vision panels, and give a report, test report, as per the IS code, to check if that specification and the quality of that glass panels are within the norms. Therein reducing the chances of having big distortions in the quality. So this is where some of the small, these are not big steps, but tiny steps, but those make, at the end of the day, it makes quite a quantum difference in ensuring consistency at the site.
Right. So, Mr. Jyoti, we would like you to tell us more about what are the recent technologies you believe can increase the energy efficiency in glass manufacturing?
Honestly, I'm not a specialist in glass, but from what I know as a testing agency, we have been constantly, when we attend a lot of seminars, we have experts coming and talking about, how the glass could be made more energy efficient by, increasing the level of performance, the coatings, the soft coatings, the single glass, gold, or double silver or triple silver, these kind of processes which are being used on performance glass to enhance its energy efficiency. So ultimately, you have to see the entire system as where energy can be saved. It's other than decarbonization, yes, it's important. Recycling, yes, it's important. But every little segment of that industry has to contribute. And in that sense, every square meter of glass, if we can make it more efficient in terms of energy, then it substantially reduces the energy inside the building, either heating or cooling, and that in turn impacts the overall energy efficiency. So that is one of the things that everybody is talking about. And number 2 is the BIP, which is having photovoltaic cells on the glass itself, which other than being aesthetic, other than just pure aesthetics or protection or energy efficiency, it also generates some amount of energy and making the building self-sustainable. It cannot be a net zero, but as of now, the technology is expensive. But like everything else, as the production and the volume and the demand picks up, the industry will rise to the challenge. Like Mr. Mohammad was mentioning, the cost per megawatt of solar power maybe 5 years ago was X, and now it's about 0.4X. And as the product volume increases, I'm sure that 0.4x will come down to 0.25x, and that will in turn, generate more demand for such a technology. So BIPV is one thing that off the head I can see that where glass, other than being a part of the facade, also used to generate some energy.
Thank you very much, Mr. Jyoti, for sharing your valuable inputs. Also, as we know that UAE has been proactive in adopting sustainable practices and reducing emissions across various sectors, it has already made a significant progress in its decarbonization efforts. And I trust that today's discussion has shed light on the crucial role of glass industry in fulfilling the UAE's decarbonization vision. With this, I would like to thank you everyone for joining us today. It was indeed an interesting discussion. Additionally, registrations are open for the visitors on our website to register for the Global Glass Show, which is on 6th and 7th September at Conrad Etihad Towers in Abu Dhabi, UAE. Thank you everyone once again for joining us today. Have a great day ahead.